everybody. Welcome to the Comm Theory Podcast, where we break down the big ideas behind communication and connect the dots between theory and real life. Hello to all of our listeners, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Estee, and I'll be your host. So, my question to you all is: have you ever wondered why certain topics seem to take over the news, or how social media can often shape the ways that we think? Well, if you have, on today's episode, we'll explore the world of communication theory, its influence, and the hidden agenda behind many of the messages that we all get to see every day. Please join me in welcoming our special guest for today, Patricia. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about it more.
We're excited to have you. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and get into a few questions that we have from our viewers. The first question that we have is, in your own words, can you describe your theory of choice for us, please?
Of course. So I chose agenda setting theory. The definition of this theory is kind of in the name. It's basically agendas and what they look like in terms of media. So the idea of is that it basically looks at public perception through media and what's accurate and what's not accurate. So it's suggesting that media can have a control over what people look at and how it relates to them based on certain topics. So some topics are given more attention in media than other topics, and that has to do with other things like algorithm, things like engagement. Like it has to do with a lot of outside variable factors, but overall, like this idea and this theory looks at what media is being looked at, how it's being portrayed, and what the public perceives as it, and result to that. So this theory is actually a really good example of how important social media is in communication, because you won't get the same effects if you are communicating publicly or face to face. It very definitely heavily deals with media, um, and this theory is under the big umbrella of mass communication. And if anyone out there that does not know what mass communication is, it's basically the big long way of studying people's behavior in terms of widespread media. So according to a textbook that we're reading in class by Marian Dayton and Elaine Zelly, it's titled Applying Communication Theory for Professional Life. Some of the first scholars to study this theory were Maxwell McCombs and Donald Shaw. And in their years of research on this study, I am no expert compared to them. They formulated two key assumptions about this theory, and that is one, that media has an agenda, and two, people's needs to assess a certain situation. This is also known as the need for orientation. It'll influence the gravity of that agenda that they're trying to communicate. So yeah, I mean, that's the basis of agenda setting theory.
Very informative, a lot of information. So it sounds like a very useful theory for all of us, especially where we are in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
In your own perspective, how have you observed agenda setting theory in the media?
So I work in politics. I work in local government. So I directly see how the agenda setting theory can affect media day to day. So my job in local government is to be a digital media communicator. So I'm looking through digital media every single day, and we are picking what we want to highlight and not suppress, but like just the things that we simply want to communicate, because some of the bad news we obviously don't want to be pushing out and highlighting as much as our good news. The good news are things that we will strategically post throughout the week, and then the bad news is something that we'll post once on a Wednesday when we know that the timing of the day won't be a day where we get a lot of engagement, right? So we are strategic about what we're posting, and so something that doesn't run in our favor usually is when there are bad things that happen in Akron. The press wants to run with the bad negative news because bad news sells, and it's really as simple as that. Bad news gets more clicks. It's more interesting to read, and I think it's also just easier to hate and easier to read negative things than it is to read positive things, and more people want to read negative things. Um, so, I mean, an example of this is we in Akron we get a lot of negative response in terms of the Akron Police Department. Um, there are good things that happen within APD, but so many of those things get overshadowed by the bad news because people are looking at the bad news. They see it more. The press, local news outlets are publicizing it more. They're pushing it out more. And this goes back to the agenda setting theory, because my perception as a digital media communicator working for local government is that the general public hates Akron Police Department because that's what we're seeing on social media. And I don't believe that to be the case, but I think because we are highlighting, and it's not us, it's the press, it's local news. They are highlighting so much of the negative things that happen within the police department that I have a general consensus that people hate it. But there are plenty of amazing things happening in Akron, such as we have a lot of sustainability efforts like tree canopy map and removing thousands of lead line pipes that are affecting our environment. We are planting 1,800 new trees. But those are headlines that are more important to us because those are good news. But we're not seeing that being highlighted. We're seeing, shootings happening and whatnot. But it just goes to show, like, media highlights one thing to gain a perception or to gain an audience in one side of a story, and you're not getting both sides. I just think that this theory is actually really beneficial to me in my life and what I see in media and what I see in the press, because I think that it does a great example of showing what we are posting. People can perceive it in a different way based on how we are posting it. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do feel like, unfortunately, positivity doesn't sell or doesn't give people the view that will be best suited for everybody. So it's a shame that, there's not more coverage on the positivity. I'm glad you shared some of the things you all are doing because I hadn't heard about that. Like you said, I had only heard about the negatives. So to know that you all have these different programs or things that you're doing, like the planting of the trees and the funds that you're raising and all of that stuff is actually good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, with social media and digital media steadily on the rise for so many of us, how do you think the agenda setting theory influences the way people prioritize different issues in society?
I think it's prioritized based on how much it's pushed. And so if we go back to what I was talking about with the clicks, people are going to prioritize the issues that are getting the most clicks. So right now, I mean, I can speak for the city of Akron, and our biggest issue right now is public safety. And the reason that that's one of our biggest problems is because that's the one that most people have been engaging with. Whenever we post about sustainability, we get a little bit of engagement. Or we post about diversity, a little bit of engagement. Police, large engagement. So obviously we're going to focus on that. It's the same outside of government though too. So we've got platforms like TikTok or Instagram that are pushing consumerism. And so these things are pushing the ideal that we need to buy things in order to help our mental or physical struggles, in order to reach our goals, in order to impact our overall quality of life, when in reality, like, there's an agenda behind that. They want you to buy something, they want you to purchase a subscription, they want you to go somewhere. Like, it's affecting our society because it's making us shift our focus on the things that the media itself wants us to focus on. I will say as well is this is also an American thing. I think that America makes it seem like, one, that we're the greatest country, and two, we are heavily based on consumerism. So they're going to push products and push people and push celebrities and push this ideal American style life that you need, and it's not the case. Like, you don't have to live that life in order to be happy. You don't have to be a TikTok influencer and live in a $1 million mansion to be happy. Like, those aren't realistic to everybody, and those don't affect everybody's needs. Each person is different, but we have a perception in society that that's what we need to be attaining, and that's not accurate, and that's not real for most people. So
Well said. So that also, because you talked about how things may be different here in America. I know this is like the land of the great where everybody likes to come. So that kind of brings me to the point where we just recently in the last few months have had our elections. Mm-hmm. So do you feel that the agenda setting theory applies to the different political campaigns and elections that go on in our country?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. Media is filled with algorithms. And so I think that when you are engaging with things on media, whether you know that you're engaging or not, you don't necessarily have to like it or repost it to engage with it. If you sit down and watch that 5-minute video, that's engagement. And once you do that, you are creating an algorithm for yourself. So you're only seeing, when it comes to political campaigns at least, you're only going to see one side of the argument because you've engaged with that one side. So I don't think, again, this goes back to my point, like, I don't think social media is a good way to educate yourself because you're only going to see the one side, and the one side is not going to be 100% factual with you, especially in campaigning, because they want you to, it's an agenda. They want you to vote for them. So not only are they going to fearmonger and like make you fear the other side, but they're going to over dramatize, I guess, their priorities. So you really have to, and it's unfortunate because you have to actually do extra work to find the real news. They are pushing so much false news and so many things that are over um, dramatized and things that aren't actually 100% accurate. But in order to actually combat that, you have to do your own research, and most people aren't going to do that. So that's why it's so easy to fall for one side of a political campaign argument, because it's easy, it's in front of you, and you don't have to do any more research on it.
Social media and different things that we see shouldn't be used as the basis for educating and informing ourselves when it comes to the elections and campaigns. But is it safe to say, in your opinion, that social media, especially these days, is playing a major part in shaping or reshaping voters' concerns and views overall?
Yes, I do think so. I think social media overall is not a 100% reliable source. I think it picks and chooses, and it also gives you what you want based on your algorithm. Usually, a lot of the social media content, whether it's governmental or not, has an agenda. Like most of the things you are seeing, there's a reason you are seeing it. And even when you follow celebrities, like they're pushing that they have a perfect life, and that's an agenda because you want them to watch, their movie or buy their new skincare product. Like it's all an agenda, and there's a reason behind every single post that you see most of the time. So I do think that social media might address the concerns of the public, but it's not trustworthy or reliable. And they are going to essentially tell you what you want to hear.
So, how would you suggest that individuals make themselves more aware of the influence of agenda setting on and off of social media?
That's a really good question. I think that people, they can ask themselves one question, and that can start the conversation between them and whoever else is interested in doing this. And that one question is, what is this piece of content or piece of communication trying to communicate to me? I think that you can ask when you're looking at media, and most of the media will give you an answer. What is this trying to communicate towards me? And that's going to answer your question about agenda setting, because it's basically asking what is their agenda in posting this? Why are they posting this, and then why is it on my feed? I think that that's a great question to jumpstart that conversation. And I think understanding why certain media exists might help impact or respond to what the engagement looks like and allow you to perceive information in a different way. And I think, like I said, being somebody that wants to be a better receiver of information, I think that it's really important to look at both sides of all arguments. There might be more than two sides, so look at all sides of an argument, one. And two, be curious about what you're seeing. And I would also question, is it true or false, and if it's accurate, because they're gonna, like, I mean, media's not gonna stop. It's only gonna get worse from here, honestly. So I would just make sure you're looking at what the media is telling you. Is it true, and do you need it? That was my way of going about it, I think.
I think it would be definitely helpful for all of us, for sure. Well, I feel like you said everything so elegantly, and we got a lot of good information. So I definitely want to thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts. I feel like you gave a lot of information to myself and all of our listeners to actually take into account and to use to be more informative about the decisions that we make and what type of content we engage with and how we actually let it affect us. So thank you so much for that. I've enjoyed our time and getting to know more about you and all about the agenda setting theory. And I'm sure our listeners feel the same. So I'm hoping that today's topic gave all of us a lot more to think about and just made us overall more aware about the realities of the content that we see online. So for our viewers, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you subscribe, like, comment, and share it with loved ones. Thank you again, Patricia, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone.